I can't believe you guys are here. It's a beautiful day. You should be outside enjoying the sun. I mean, this is amazing. Thank you for spending a little time with me today. It's just so great to be here and to see so much of Manila on this trip. I was last in Manila in 1997, and as I told Angel, I don't ever remember seeing the daylight. I went out at midnight. I think we came back at 7 in the morning. So this is a very different time, and I'm just really loving my time here. So thanks for being here. I'm going to take a picture very quickly because my mother doesn't believe that anyone reads my books. So,
all right.
Hold on.
Okay, so we're going to get I guess this is a groupie.
This is a huge groupie.
You are infected. You're infected by the Philippine selfie syndrome.
Yeah, so everyone wave. Everyone wave.
Did you take a lot of things from your childhood or when you're growing up into the book? And did the people that you were inspired of kind of knew about it? Or what was their reaction when they read the book? Did they know that they were this person or not?
None of it was inspired by my childhood. I'm kidding. No. This book was very much inspired by growing up in Singapore and sort of the strange childhood I had. And also, my frequent visits back to Asia and just how every time I went back to Asia, every few years, things would just change so rapidly. And I would see, like, one year my friend would be driving a Mercedes, and next year it would be a Bentley, and then the next year it would be a Lamborghini, and it's just, things change so rapidly. And so that's what inspired me to really try to capture this world of crazy, rich Asia. And the response has been really amazing, If there are people I know from my childhood or my family who don't approve of the book, they've been too polite to say anything. So I've only heard positive things from people, and especially young people. People under the age of 25 have really embraced the book and told me how much it speaks to them. They might not be crazy rich, they may not even be Asian, but they can all sort of relate to having, domineering mother, busybody cousins, snobbish uncles, things like that. So it's been very positive. I think there were a lot of really crazy parties last weekend, at the big event, and a lot of private parties, a lot of crazy celebrating. A lot of which I hope will end up in book 3. So you'll see. Absolutely. Every single story in all my books is really inspired by a true life event that I've either personally witnessed or heard about or read in the news. I don't have an imagination at all. I really don't. I overhear things or I see things and I'm a fly on the wall. So everything is based on reality. I mean, the hotel scene from the first book, when the family goes to London and they find themselves turned away by the hotel because the snobby hotel people didn't realize it was a Chinese family thing. That absolutely happened. I know that for a fact because it happened to a family that I'm very close to. It's no accident that I think 4 of the top hotels in London are owned by Singaporeans. Well, as you know, this is a completely fictional character. Completely. I really just wanted to, in all of my books, I really try to really create a mixture of Asian characters because the whole point of the whole series was to show what's happening all over Asia. Not, I might have started in Singapore only because that's what I knew best, but I always tried to mention, crazy rich Indonesians, crazy rich, sort of Malaysians, things like that. And it was high time, I thought, to really have a cool, sophisticated, elegant, and very nice Filipino character. So that, that was just my nod to that. So, Astrid is really sort of inspired by someone that I know that's very, very close to me. She's even more fabulous in real life. I had to tone her down for the book. And Tyersall Park does exist, and you were quite, clever in your study. You found the green park, and if you sort of zoomed out, you'll see on Google Earth that you have this big city all around this green park of 60 acres. So it's definitely a private piece of land, and if you zoom even closer, you'll see sort of a few of the house structures. It does exist. It's actually a house that's in disrepair. It's been it hasn't been abandoned, it's just been neglected for probably about 80 years now, maybe more. It's owned by the Sultan of Johor. So he's literally the largest private landowner in Singapore, and he's, too rich to care about developing this piece of land. So there's a very old mansion there that's, people do hikes into the property and they take pictures. If you Google the words Istana Woodneck, Woodneuk, you'll find amazing photographs of this beautiful palace that's now in a state of disrepair. You can go in. I mean, people lead tours there now. Kind of secret tours, but they do hiking tours into the property and stuff like that. So it's possible. Someone's doing a crazy rich Asian tour in Singapore, and I don't know if he takes people to that property, but look it up. I'm sure you can maybe find it if you're interested. But it's having such a huge piece of land is so rare in Singapore these days. It's a very special place. So I hope it remains that way. It was always my intention with the way I planned the books that, I always said the first book was Crazy Rich Asians, and the second book I wanted to call initially Crazier, Richer Asians. And that's exactly what is happening in China. The wealth there is so new and so gargantuan that people are making money and spending money at a rate that's just kind of jaw-dropping. That's different from the rest of the world. So I always wanted to explore that and look at the phenomenon of the wealthy class in China right now. Yeah, no, the books are, the story I want to tell has been planned since even before I began the first book. So my hope was to write a trilogy, 3 books, that will tell the complete story of Nick and Rachel and Astrid and their families, but will also travel to different parts of Asia to reveal different aspects of Asia. The movie is progressing really amazingly well. We're almost at the point where we're beginning to do casting. So it's good that you bring up that question of who should play Nick and Astrid. Personally, I really don't have a set vision of who I see playing these characters. I want to try to be open to seeing who comes during the auditions and who really brings the best performance and deserves to play these characters. So I've never had a set vision of, it has to be this actor or that actor, but I can promise you, Brad Pitt will not be in this movie. Well, I'm actually a shapeshifter, so I'm able to embody 6 different countries at the same time, but no, nothing. I think as a writer, it's very important to sort of have an imagination. There's so many writers who write about places that they've never been to. Or think about people that write books set in historical France or Paris, or they create worlds like Game of Thrones, for example, where their entire worlds are created. So I think it does take a lot of imagination. For me, it's a combination of imagining places, but also I have been lucky enough to go to all the places I write about. And for me, it's very important to really be able to see the places and breathe the air in the rooms of whether it's in Vancouver or London or Paris. For me, I want to be there first to be able to write it, and then from there I layer it with imagination, with building the situations involved and things like that. So it's a twofold process. And with my characters, it's really a combination. Some of them are very much inspired by real people. So sometimes I would literally just overhear a conversation and go, "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I have to put this in the book." Other times, it's knowing these characters and sort of imagining them and imagining what they would say and really kind of, going deep into that world. The one thing I found interesting in writing fiction was that, and so many other writers told me this would happen, and I never believed it would happen. I always thought it was just complete nonsense. The characters really start to take over after a while. As you begin writing, as you begin spending time writing about Astrid or Rachel, they really start to control the pen and tell you where they want to go, what they want to say. So sometimes there were storylines that I had planned out, but that changed because something very strange happens in that creative process that I can't really explain, but they really guide you along. Colette is actually one of the characters that's not based on any one person. To me, she's an amalgam of several different types of people that I've met. And there are many of those characters in my books also. But she definitely is this multi-layered character that is inspired by a lot of different types of people I've met. And a few very specific ones that I met in China. And yeah, for me, I also write to try to understand a person. And I really she's such an interesting creature because she was born into this world of privilege, and she's been given everything from the day she was born, and it's still not enough. I wanted to sort of explore that kind of character in this book, contrasting that with some of the other characters in earlier books, like Astrid, who was born of everything too, but has a very different sense of morality, has a very different mode of behavior. There's an outline in my head. I always know the big story of what I want to achieve in a book, and then from there I break it down to sort of like the general sense of, it's really like a movie. I think of my books as movies, and how I want to make this movie, and when I want drama, when I want slow moments, when I want romantic moments. But it's a very organic process. I'm not a planner. I'm the most disorganized person on the planet. So it's very hard for me to sort of create an outline and stick to it, because as I told you, the characters will change their minds as to what they want to happen. So with Colette, for example, I set out writing a character to be a certain way, and her story evolved. The character evolved. She grew, she changed, she kind of morphed into a different person. And, I find that interesting, to play with people who have a lot of ambiguities, because I think that's human nature. No one's always perfect, no one's always good, no one's always evil. We're all different people with layers and layers of issues and complexities. What book are you reading? I think that a lot of them inhabit very air-conditioned worlds. So they're chauffeured around, or they're in houses that are air-conditioned, but no. But I think people, at least for my books, I want to take people on a fantasy ride. It's an escape. It's a romp. So you don't want to hear about their body odor issues, or if Nick has an acne breakout. I don't think that's really the point. You really want to see them sort of enjoying good food and getting involved in all this drama and intrigue, and the really, really sort of personal details of uncomfortable personal hygiene issues are just not that interesting to me. And I don't think that I don't think they add anything to but I hope you'll see that some of them experience pain and heartache and tears and lots of conflicts. That's how they sweat. Wow, I mean, how long do you want to be here? I'm just thinking off the top of my head, what I've read in the last few years that has really sort of inspired me as I've written my other books. And one is a writer named Anthony Trollope. I don't know if anyone's read much Trollope, but he's a great English novelist that existed in the 19th century. And he, was the original Downton Abbey guy, I think. He wrote about the upper class of England, but with such detail and such complexity. And his books are like 800 to 900 pages long, because he was paid by page. So of course he wanted to make them as long as possible. His books were serialized in magazines, weekly magazines in England, and he was like he was like, the Daniel Steele of his day, back in the 1860s. But it's fascinating, his insight into that world of England, the privileged class, of the politics, of the wealth, of all the strategic marrying to sort of grow empires. So he really, I think, helped to really inspire what I wanted to do in building this world and different, expanding it into a trilogy, things like that. He's one of them. I love the work of Janice Y.K. Lee. I don't know if you know her work. She's a Hong Kong-based writer who wrote a beautiful book set in Hong Kong during the 40s and 50s. That's really kind of like the Crazy Rich Asians of Hong Kong of the 50s. Amazing book. So she's very much an influence as well. But I can keep going on. But there's so many great books out there and not enough time to read them. That's the problem. That's a really interesting idea. I mean, I haven't really thought that much about expanding it beyond just the novels, but people have been giving me a lot of ideas, like a travel guide, a cookbook, things like that, and I'd love to explore those possibilities. I think right now readers want me to focus on writing book 3 before I get lured into other directions, so at least now I think my priority is to sort of continue the series before I think about travel guides. But you can use this as a travel guide, just to mark the pages, and they're all in there. Every place I write about exists, and most of the time I don't change the names of the places. Who's my least favorite character? That's so interesting, because I love them all like children in a way. But if I would have to say my least favorite character, I'm totally stumped. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I can't think, I mean, if I don't like to write about someone that day, I just wouldn't. They wouldn't be in the book, you know? So I unfortunately, you know, I can't deliver on it. They're all my babies, so there's not one that I don't like in some way. I like them. I like a lot of the very minor characters too that make it into the book. You know, I love Catherine Lim. Have you read her work? Look her up. I mean, she's an amazing writer that writes about everyday life in Singapore and all the interesting little idiosyncrasies of that island. So she's, you know, one I would really ask you to sort of look up. You know, in Singapore, I think the best thing to do is to go to a hawker center, because there you can have, you know, 85 million different restaurant experiences in one meal, you know. So, you know, it's really hard to find bad food in Singapore because a bad restaurant would not exist. You know, they would be bombed out of existence, I think, with bad reviews and things like that. So in Singapore, I love Singapore street food. You know, in Hong Kong to me, and I know this will probably upset a lot of Singaporeans, I feel like they've really perfected the art of Chinese cuisine. In Hong Kong, it's really kind of reached, you know, Hong Kong is like the Paris of Asian cuisine in a way. And I love a restaurant called Cuisine. Has amazing modern Cantonese food that's innovative and yet, you know, rooted in the traditional flavors. In London, I love Mandarin Kitchen for the lobster noodles. Amazing noodles and this lobster sauce. You know, they're all in the book. I'll look for them, but those would be my favorites.
Or
yeah, you know, it was really more just details of like houses and like, you know, some people, you know, my editor thought that some of these houses were just too unbelievable. You know, like for example, the house that had a shark pond in the middle of the living room.
Right.
Like, you know, I was actually there. I dipped my fingers in and tried to agitate the sharks. So, you know, there were other aspects of that house that she was like, you know, you can't talk about the 12 Rolls Royces in the driveway. You know, that's just going to lose people. So she wanted me to just tone down some of the details. And then there were so many more private jet trips, people flying around on private jets. And she's like, way too many private jets. You're going to piss off the readers. You know, that no one here walks or drives a car. Like everyone's in either helicopters or private jets. And I'm like, well, that's the truth of this world. You know, that's how they travel, you know. But she wanted me to sort of modulate that a little bit. And then the third book, not third book, this book, you know, there's a car race scene, an illegal drag race that takes place. And, you know, we had to tone that down a bit because she just felt it was too unbelievable and that readers would not want to know about this. So, I don't know, but I got a lot more license in book 2 after book 1 worked. And, you know, they saw that people were appreciating what I was really portraying. They let me really kind of be a lot more extreme with book 2. I could have been even more extreme, but I also didn't want to lose the reader.